The world is full of rules and regulations, endless rules and regulations. And yet, it seems that for some individuals, they can actually just lose their money and no one seems to care. Well, one member of Parliament, who I'm pleased to say has picked up this Phillips Trust story that I ran a few weeks ago here, is David Simmonds. And he's the MP, Conservative MP for Ruislip, Northwood and Pinner. David, I gave a brief outline on this a few weeks ago, that building societies had recommended people to will writing organisations, to trust companies, and in many cases, these people have lost a great deal of money, haven't they?
Yes, there's a group of members of Parliament who've been looking at what's happening to their constituents. And as we've begun to compare notes, what we found is a pattern where people have been introduced, often by their bank or a building society, to someone who's written a will or set up a trust for them. And then sometimes after that person's died, or maybe they've grown ill, often with dementia, and family members have stepped in and tried to help sort out their financial affairs. A situation's come to light where they may have lost their home, they may have seen assets that have been transferred beyond their control, or simply been sold something that's created problems for them. For example, people sometimes have set these up to avoid inheritance tax. And created a capital gains tax liability for the people they meant the money to go to. So it's all sorts of problems beginning to emerge from it, and we need to make sure that those who profited from this behaviour are held accountable for that.
Yeah, I mean, David, a fool and his money is soon parted. If people get things right, they get things wrong in terms of their own investments. That's fine. You buy a stock, it goes up, it goes down. Whatever it is, that's down to you. I think what really angers people here is that in most cases it was the building societies recommending these services to their customers and receiving a commission, and then when it goes wrong, washing their hands of it. But even, and this is the bit that gets me, even the FCA arguing these weren't regulated products, nothing to do with us, Gov.
And that's not acceptable. I think the thing we're looking at is how we make sure that when a regulated financial institution provides or sells a service to its customers, that it's clear what the accountability is around that. Yeah. And we've all seen the adverts where companies are saying, you should sign up with this. We are regulated by one or another of these schemes. But the product that we're marketing to you at the moment is not regulated at all. And that's creating risks for people. And the argument that the buyer beware simply isn't sufficient. We need to make sure that we've got effective regulation so the customer knows exactly what they're buying and what the risks are.
But we also need an effective regulator. And I've read reams since my own battles with the NatWest Group a few months ago. I've read reams of documents that have come from the FCA where they're literally bullying organisations to adopt inclusion and diversity quotas, where they're going to change the rules for who is an acceptable person to have a licence in the financial services industry, which will include social media comments that the FCA may not like. And they're spending an awful lot of time on this. And it seems to me, David Simmonds, less time worrying about people getting ripped off.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's the conclusion I've come to with many colleagues, that the purpose of the FCA and other regulators in other markets is to make sure that these businesses are doing their job properly. They're not there to promote best practice, they're to make sure that basic regulatory standards are being upheld so customers are not being put at risk. And that's what we need to see their focus being.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you promise you'll keep up the pressure? He's frozen. Well, I didn't get his answer. I'm going to assume it's a positive, given that he came on the programme to talk about it. Well, let's join a real-life victim. Gordon Crosthwaite is a victim of the Phillips Trust Scandal. Gordon, welcome to the programme. I know you're not a happy bunny. Just sort of in potted form, what happened to you?
It was my mother-in-law. She was introduced to the estate planning group by the Building Society, and they handed her over to a financial advisor who worked for their subsidiary company, Newcastle Financial Advisors Limited. And the whole aim was to get her to set up an investment fund and put it into a trust that belonged to the Family Trust Corporation. And that's what happened. And on 3 different occasions, she was advised to take funds from her building society accounts and other accounts with other building societies or savings, and put them into that investment fund that belonged to the Family Trust Corporation. and the Family Trust Corporation was taken over by the Phillips Trust Corporation. And between 2018 and 2019, we didn't hear anything from the Building Society or Newcastle Financial Advisors Limited about advising us that that money belonged to an unregulated company.
So the Newcastle Building Society recommended you take this course of action in the
Yes.
first place?
Yeah, even directly and indirectly, because their subsidiary company was the company that advised us to put the investments into the...
But I'm confused, Gordon, because the Building Society is a regulated company.
Mm-hmm.
Any money that is invested invested in markets, bonds, shares, whatever it is, they're all regulated products. How's the bit in the middle not regulated?
Well, because will writing and trust setup isn't regulated.
How is that the case?
It's Financial Conduct Authority rules, and obviously Financial Conduct Authority controls the Financial Ombudsman Service, who we've complained to, who have rejected that complaint on the basis that that wasn't an unregulated activity. And the Building Society, there are 8 building societies involved in this, not just mine at Newcastle.
Yeah.
But they're saying, we introduce you to will writing, but it was the estate planning group. They introduce you to setting up a family trust, but that was Newcastle Financial Advisors Limited. Newcastle Financial Advisors Limited were appointed by Openwork, which is another third-party company. Yeah. But I fail to see if Newcastle Building Society weren't in control, how could somebody from a third-party company take money out?
And
of that
they,
account?
of course, Newcastle, and we will have a company response from them in a minute. Mm-hmm. Newcastle, on giving this advice to your family, received a commission for this.
Absolutely, yes, of course they did.
And probably
they don't market and promote things for nothing.
So how much money has this so far cost your family this month?
Well, first of all, the property was at risk, but we've got that back through legal process that we had to pay for. £117,000 invested through Newcastle Financial Advisors Limited and the Family Trust.
So this really hurts in lots of ways. What would you, Gordon, as I said at the start of the programme, or start of this segment, if you put your money into the stock market, you might make money, you might lose money, and that's the way that it ought to be in a free society. Being misled into what you're being sold is a very, very different thing. The FCA don't appear to be interested in your case.
No, not it's an unregulated activity, apparently. The financial advice and investment advice is a regulated activity, but they're getting away with it because there's a subsidiary company and a third-party company, and it's a triangle of convenience.
There's something very, very wrong here. Gordon, thank you for coming in and talking to me. Now, the FCA, of course, we have contacted, and an FCA spokesperson said, this is a very complex, they always use that word, don't they? This is a very complex issue involving the provision of unregulated services by unregulated firms where concerns about regulated firms have been raised. We have asked the firms for more information, which we have scrutinised. We have also recently been sent information from consumers affected by this issue and are reviewing this currently. Gosh, it's all so familiar, really, isn't it? And a Newcastle Building Society spokesperson says, at no point have Newcastle Building Society had any involvement with the Phillips Trust Corporation. Any allegation which states we have consented to, supported or been involved in any transfer from the Will Writing Company Limited to the Family Trust Corporation or Phillips Trust Corporation is untrue. I'll give you 10 seconds to answer that, Gordon. Clean.
So they deny it, but they wrote to us reassuring us that the investments and properties were not at risk with the Phillips Trust Corporation.
You better keep hold of that letter, I think.